It is my pleasure to welcome to the show A.J. Rice. He is the CEO of Publius PR. Did I pronounce that right?
Publius.
Publius PR. I didn't do well I struggled with grammar in grammar school. But welcome, AJ. It's finally a pleasure to see you in person. AJ has been a very good ally of our show. He has sent us many guests over the last 2 years, and they're always riveting and exciting guests, just like we had the would-be assassin alleged, Vem Miller, 2 weeks ago. AJ, straighten us out on that. It sounds like a bunch of baloney to me.
It is a bunch of baloney. He violated California's gun laws by driving in from Nevada into California. So he violated a bunch of magazine and gun laws, Gavin Newsom's gun laws. And, the goofy sheriff, who's a bit of a nut, apparently, they didn't like his IDs because he's Armenian. And if you've ever met an Armenian, they have the name he's a media figure. His name is Vem Miller. He's a media figure.
Right.
His real name is this crazy word, right? It's not as easy to say as Kardashian, which is Armenian. It's this crazy Armenian name. So, he goes by Vem Miller because he's a media figure. He owns a network. He used to make music videos in Hollywood. He's a fixture in Nevada politics. He's actually a Trump caucus captain in Nevada. So it's crazy what they're doing to him. And they didn't like his IDs didn't match. So then they search the truck. They go into his gang box or whatever the hell he's got back there, and they find the guns that he's never even fired that he keeps on him because of some of his reporting. He's in danger quite a bit. So they book him. He is out within an hour. If this was a real threat, it would be everywhere. The FBI, the Secret Service would be there, right? He posts like $500 bail. He walks out, and the goofy sheriff goes out in front of the media and says, because maybe he wants to be a hero, and maybe he's trying to get an appointment because he's a Trump guy, the sheriff. I just stopped the third assassin. So the New York Post, I'll read this to you, is reporting, this is an exclusive today, that the poor guy, Vem Miller, is living in, here he goes, this is the cover of the New York Post. Vem Miller in hiding, fears for his life after preposterous claim he was plotting to hurt Trump. So it's the whole thing is nonsense. Everyone knows Vem Miller. He's been at CPAC. He's been at Freedom Fest. It's just crazy.
Well, I'll tell you straight up, when I saw the press conference with the sheriff, my instincts are usually pretty good. And when I watched that press conference, I said to myself, this is the Tim Walz of stolen valor of the United States Sheriff's Association, because it was clear to me that, and we had Vim on the show, as I said, and we spent a good portion of the time talking about how we both like Donald Trump and hope that he gets elected president of the United States. I mean, and Vim's a really smart guy. And
well, he's suing the sheriff.
Well, good. As well he should. And I don't think that sheriff had probable cause to go into the back of his truck either.
Well, they used the discrepancy in the names. So Vem Miller versus his real name, which is this nutty name that if you're some bumpkin and you're looking at this name, maybe you think to yourself that this guy might be some kind of Middle Eastern terrorist or something.
Well, every actor in Hollywood would be guilty of that, as would every rapper in the United States. So I think that's pretty tenuous. But anyway, so A.J. Rice has written a book, and it is called The White Privilege Album. And I have been reading it. It is a really good book. Actually, AJ, you say in this book what I have had on my mind, and probably afraid to say it. But a lot of guests that have come on, we've talked about race in America today. How can you talk about what day it is without talking about race? And so we talk about, and I've said many times that I think this notion of racism, sexism, all the isms that we have invented are a manipulation to get us to fall in line, because who wants to be called a bad word and have their reputation tarnished? And I think that's kind of the theme of this book. Is that a fair characterization?
Sure. Among other things. I mean, look, we're only talking about it because the media forces it on us, because they filter their entire existence through it. They filter it all through it. Racial grievance, because they need customers, right? It's not just the media, Hollywood, Democrat Party, some of the public sector unions, and so on, they're obsessed with this. And they need to keep customers. They need to keep people mad and screaming about white privilege, screaming about the patriarchy, right? Screaming about all these things. So, because if, God forbid, anyone were to rise and stop filtering their entire existence through, who they go home with at night and how much melanin they've got in their skin, then my God, they might think for themselves, and they might think that, the race hustlers are a bunch of con men that should be kicked to the curb. So we're exposing them with this book. We're doing it with humor in a way that only A.J. Rice can do. And I wasn't on here for The Woking Dead, but this book is a sequel to The Woking Dead. That was volume 1. This is volume 2. And, you never know, brother, if they don't, ship me off to the gulag, maybe there'll be a volume 3.
Well, you got my attention right off the bat. You said, here's the truth. Until proven otherwise, every single cry of racism is nothing more or less than an opportunist seeking attention and cash. That's it. That's where we are as a society.
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, and it's not just a black and white thing. It is really about Western civilization. People ask about woke. What is woke, other than a trendy term that is actually losing its flavor? It doesn't mean we've hit peak woke. It doesn't mean that they've gone away. They've burrowed in to a lot of places like termites and tapeworms. They're there. And, they've got trickle-down wokeism. They use ESG. They use DEI. But look, with an apology to the Beatles, the White Privilege album is about kidnapping the language back from the left, turning it around and weaponizing it back against them, right? I'm abducting it. I'm abducting the language. One of my mentors, Laura Ingraham, did that with her book, Power to the People. That was a sort of left-wing protest term. She kidnapped it and used it back against them. So, but when you hear the left scream about white privilege, what and who do you think they're talking about? I'll tell you. Western civilization, which is Judeo-Christian, Greco-Roman civilization, they can't stand this. They can't stand it. They don't want you to learn about George Washington. They don't want you to learn about Christopher Columbus. When you saw the Civil War generals and the statues and the bases like Fort Bragg and the elementary schools all slowly being renamed Michelle Obama Elementary, and you see Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson being removed. And look, I'm a Philly guy. I'm a Union guy. I would have been in a Navy uniform if the war was being fought tomorrow. But this was never going to end with Robert E. Lee and his horse, Traveler, and the very fine people down there in Charlottesville. Because as I'll note, the subtitle of the book is Bringing Racial Harmony to Very Fine People on Both Sides, which became the foundational hoax for the Trump is a racist lie that the media and Hollywood and the big tech companies pushed. And this is almost 10 years ago now where Trump said this. And yet, in this wonderful election season, where we have fake primaries and candidates that are plugged into the wall being unplugged from the wall, Joe Biden brought it up in his debate with Trump. Kamala brought it up in her debate with Trump. I was waiting for it with Timmy Boy, Tampon Tim, to bring it up with J.D. Vance. He never brought it up. But it makes appearances, and it's been debunked. And not just by John Gordon and A.J. Rice. It's been debunked by, Bill Maher and CBS News and Snopes, this goofy Soros-funded fact-checking organization. It's a lie. And yet they push it. They push it because they don't have much else, right? But they hate Western civilization. That is the first lesson of the White Privilege album.
What a shame. I mean, why would you hate the greatest country on earth since the beginning of all mankind? But I love the story that you tell about President Trump freeing, I don't know how you pronounce this, $D.
ASAP Rocky.
Is that,
ASAP Rocky.
Oh, I don't know how you get that out of LSD, but okay. But he was in a Swedish jail, and Trump almost started a trade war over incarcerating him, right?
So the biggest jailbreak in American history of African Americans was by Abraham Lincoln. The second biggest was Donald Trump, not just from his prison reform bill, but also from a lot of his policies that sort of got some people that were swept up by people like Kamala Harris in stupid things when they were in their youth, let them out of prison. Barack Obama couldn't get it done. The first black president, Bill Clinton, couldn't get it done. I will tell you that never in history of Western civilization has a white leader threatened a country like Sweden that used to be tough. They had the Vikings, and now they're just, they've sort of, they're all sipping their herbal tea now with their linguine spines there. He threatened Sweden, a European ally, with a trade war if they didn't let an African American rapper out of prison. I have never in my life seen this. The media didn't want to talk about it, but he was willing to leverage the full faith and credit of the United States to spring this rapper from prison. Now, different rappers were calling the White House that were friends with him, I think Kanye and Lil Wayne and others. And sure enough, boom, it happened. He was out of prison faster than his head could spin. I mean, have you ever seen anything like it? It's crazy, right? It's crazy. And there are stories throughout the book like that where I showcase some well-known, some not as well-known moments when white people risked blood, treasure, reputation to, as the left likes to say, and they love saying this, bending the arc, of history towards justice. I mean, it has been done. It's been done in sports and, again, there in entertainment with the President of the United States acting.
Well, it's perplexing to me. Why does Donald Trump not get credit for the things that he accomplished, like criminal justice reform, which you were talking about a moment ago? He did more in 4 years than Barack Obama did in 8. And he freed this rapper from a Swedish jail who was being incarcerated unfairly. Why will the left, who pretends or pretends to represent African Americans and people who are disenfranchised and don't get a fair break in our society, and now you've got a guy who's done a tremendous amount, greatest black employment since the beginning of our country, and they refuse to give him credit. What's up?
Well, you're never going to get credit from the grievance mongers. You're never going to get credit from, the Democrat Party and the mainstream media and parts of academia, Hollywood, and big tech. You're never going to. But we don't need them to acknowledge it. Because right now, as we sit here doing this show, we are inside, John, of the catharsis. We're inside of the catharsis. There's a revelation happening. And it's happening at least at the top tier of Kamala Harris's campaign, where there's a 5-alarm fire going off. And the 5-alarm fire is about her being underwater with Muslim voters in Michigan, underwater with Jewish voters in Pennsylvania, with Latin American voters in Arizona and Nevada. And of course, the brothers, African Americans, are fleeing her because they don't have amnesia. They remember 3 years ago. And Barack Obama can go to Pittsburgh and condescend and say, you need to vote for Kamala because she's from the neighborhood, brothers. She's from the neighborhood. I don't know what neighborhood he's talking about. The Canadian neighborhood. I'm not sure which neighborhood he's talking about. She grew up in Canada. And look, Barack Obama, who's the second black president, Bill Clinton, a chubby white guy from Arkansas, was the first black president. That's what I was told. That's what I was told. So I'm not going to dispute it. Maya Angelou told me that, so I'm going with it. And here's a half-white guy from Hawaii in Pittsburgh. These guys are thinking about the Steelers game. They don't care what Barack's talking about. So they got Hussein in the membrane happening. And he's, with disdain, saying to them, she's from the neighborhood. She's a sister. You need to vote for her because of race. And if you don't, you're a misogynist. You're a sexist. You need to get down with the struggle, with Kamala's struggle. And it ain't working. Because, most people will sit there and they'll say, supposed first black president, our life didn't really we thought we were going to move into a post-racial America. At least that's what I was told by NPR and Newsweek and ABC News. Barack Obama wins the presidency. Welcome to the post-racial America. And yet, during his presidency, we got more divided. We didn't get more divided because, white people got upset that Barack Obama was in the White House. We got more divided because Barack Obama single-handedly midwifed Black Lives Matter right out into the open. Occupy Wall Street right out into the open, which became Antifa, right? So the Cambridge police acted stupidly. If I had a son, he would look like Trayvon Martin. And, Obama had a chance to put black people on the Supreme Court. He didn't. All the people on the Supreme Court were put there by white people. He put 2 childless women on the Supreme Court. And then that third one, a white male, he tried to jam on there, is now the Attorney General, Merrick Garland. So
Thank God his nomination didn't get approved.